All right, welcome everybody to Monday's expert interview. Today we have another great show. What are smart cities solving for? In this example, safety, lower energy use, water management, transportation, and a better urban experience. The Digi Group plans, designs, builds, manufactures holistic smart cities using technology solutions as the basis of its designs. From the tallest of buildings to the smallest of villages, TDG smart city solutions have been implemented in China, Southeast Asia, India, the Middle East, Europe, and throughout the US of A. Today, we will showcase Qingdao, if I can say that one right. We're going to get into that virtual reality industrial park project as an example of how digital innovation is challenging our sense of time, space, in existence as architecture continues to inspire the human condition. Digital assets, blockchain, federated metaverse, and meeting the challenge of designing for both the physical and virtual worlds are highlighted. Human-centric, data-driven design is leading the momentum for safer, healthier, and more inspiring urban environments and experiences. Boy, if that isn't a mouthful, when we're going to have a mouthful of conversation today, I can tell you, we've had some of the most interesting men in the world on the show, just like the Dos Equis commercial, and today is going to be another one. At Dave Cooper Live, we are bringing you the people and the processes that are building it better. Our guests and topics include experts in building systems, building science, building codes, to the tech used to build it better. We are always seeking out the best and the brightest in construction and discovering all of the ways that innovative buildings are coming to life. So without further ado, let's welcome our good friend, Paul Doherty, to the show. Hey, Paul, how are you today?
Hey, Dave, great to be on your show, especially with just the amazing growth and the types of things that you talk about on your show. I'm just happy to be here, humbly, just be able to talk, with your audience about where we're seeing the future.
Yeah, well, for sure. So, I mean, even in the write-up, I was stumbling over my words, the names. You guys are doing so much stuff, not only here in the United States, but globally around the world. With smart cities, blockchain, all kinds of different technology. And we're really looking forward to jumping into this. But before we do that, Mr. Paul, we want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, or we will call your mother. And I'll have her on the show, and she'll give us all the real scoop. But you only got 2 minutes to do it, so the show's yours.
Well, thank you, Dave. Well, I'm an architect, a real one, not a software architect. I can still get sued. Also a builder, and have been involved with technology, well, since I was in architectural school, because instead of going to work in New York City, which is where my School of Architecture was, and doing internship, I went to work with IBM, designing their trade show booths and whatnot. So I got to learn tech really early on. And, Dave, I've been pushing a boulder up the hill just based on this one notion of why isn't technology the fourth utility, right, in a building? And why are buildings not computers? Why can't they talk with each other? I've been trying to scratch my head over that one since the late 1980s when I was in school. So what's really been nice is watching how the world has had these collisions of different industries to reach a point now where the technology, the built environment, and the idea of what real estate development can be is colliding in such a way that's not violent. It's actually when two ideas come together and a third better idea comes out. And that's where I found myself. I lead up a group called the Digi Group, or TDG as it's known. We are a boutique real estate investment group. We are real estate investors at risk. So everything we build, we actually operate. So talk about holistic. I have to dream and think about things before they become an issue, such as roads. What happens when you design roads and you don't need curbs? Interesting one, right? Or actually, who's going to be the group that actually manages the roads when the roads are actually generating the energy through technologies like piezoelectric, a compression technology that when cars drive on it, it excites the molecules and actually powers the vehicle. So these are the worlds that I'm dealing with, and just looking forward to talking a little bit, with your audience about where this can potentially help them, either through guideposts or mileposts, or actually, tomorrow morning, let's get to work and start implementing these crazy ideas.
Well, you know what? Are they crazy? That's the question. Or are they not crazy? Or do they make sense? I bet some of them are crazy. So let's define what are smart cities solving for. And I ask this because it's just not here in the United States. You're working with different government agencies, some all the way to the White House and other countries. What's the purpose? What is it solving for? And then I think it'll be easier to break down what's really happening.
So let's look at it from like a 50,000 foot view. When you take the human race that's on this spaceship called Earth, as we're hurtling through space, right? We have to take care of it. And it's not taking care of it because, the Earth wants to be taken care of. It's the environments that we have to maintain as a species to be there. So that's why I'm probably the farthest thing from a Birkenstock wearing, tree hugger. But at the same time, how can you not care about the environment? Right. So, I'm not a big fan of people that put a lot of acronyms after their name and put a cape on to say I'm green. That's not what's needed. And that's not what's needed in urban environments, because also at 50,000 foot on our spaceship, we're starting now to condense and be part of more and more urban environments because there's more people. And we need to start to manage that better. This is no longer an idea that you have an urban environment that grew out because it was a trading post, right? And then over time, it starts to grow. We have immediate needs, especially in fast-growing countries like China, like India, and like the Northern African region that bleeds into the Middle East, that they're looking for solutions now. And not just by looking back at the way that we used to do it. So what are smart cities solving? Trying to manage a better experience so that people are not just surviving, but they're living. So let's raise up the level. Now, does that mean that everything's tech in a smart city? No. Actually, a lot of it has to do with governance. A lot of it has to do with reimagining how we can start to take care of each other. And I think that's the most important thing. We just can't say, well, the government's going to take care of us. It's almost like what President Kennedy said, what can we do for our country? So when we start looking at smart cities and watching that the urbanization of the world is happening, this is not, well, it's just someone making it up or they're doing a PowerPoint or a podcast saying it. These are actual facts. So I think it's up to our industry that is maybe not well known for its sensitivity about things. I think that we need to have a different type of conversation with the general public and start to position ourselves for all the good with all the good people in our industry, that we have an opportunity right now to start to take these ideas and be open to doing things maybe not the same way you did it last Thursday. And let's start to explore a little bit, because this is our time to shine. Coming out of COVID, this is the time to shine, because people are looking to trust again, and they want to trust their built environment, that it's not going to harm them. So right now it's up to us and every listener on this podcast to say, let's see what I can do tomorrow morning.
Absolutely. So let's talk about a smart city, right? You're working on Qingdao Virtual Reality Industrial Park right now, and some other things. How does this begin, Paul? I here I am. I'm the president of XYZ country, and I say, Paul, our population's going through the roof, right? Our infrastructure can't handle everything that we have. We need to be better. The environment's suffering, right? We got to reduce our carbon footprint, and we got to make a healthier life for our citizens. Paul, can you help me with that? Is that how the phone call starts?
Kind of, sort of. Yeah, actually. And sometimes it's from them walking through different urban solutions that we've implemented already. And they go, tell me about this. Because you don't start with a holistic solution, boom, day one. What you got to do is understand that there's a lot of innovations out there, both technical, equipment-wise, material-wise, even work process-wise, things like the modular off-site movement, right, of that deliverable. When you start to take all those into account, those are ingredients. And it's up to us as TDG then to be the chefs, to understand the contextualization at that moment of time for that urban place is something that's going to be very unique. But there are there's this thing called mass customization. So there are certain foundation pieces such as water, waste, energy, education, healthcare, shelter, general services. Those are some basic foundations that are in all projects, but the innovations by ingredients can be a little different. It's like being a chef. And literally, those recipes that we create cookbooks. And in certain cases, we have even different cuisines, which means that we have a plethora of ways of taking all these pieces that we call a heterarchy. A heterarchy is a horizontal system, like healthcare, like transportation, like education, things like that. And when you start to put those wants and needs then into a priority, our job, and what every job of everyone in the construction industry should be, is to find how to connect those different systems together through what's called an ontology, or a vertical solution. Because then at that point, we can go in and say, listen, like the piezoelectric solution. This makes a lot of sense because you're using movement to create energy. It's wirelessly charging things, so you don't have to worry about charging stations. And oh, by the way, now our problem is, through ontology, is who's going to manage that roadway? Is it the Department of Transportation, or is it the power company? So these are the things that when we do get the call, we go in and we take a cultural anthropologist, Dr. Karen Stevenson, my good friend, who comes in and starts this hierarchy to understand what the culture is, what the climate is, what the society needs are at that moment in time. That human-centric way of then saying, well, this group needs these in a priority that says they have a climactic issue. Right. In the case of China, we worked on a thing called the Sponge City program. That was a huge, huge priority because every time they had heavy rain, these cities were flooding because everything was sized for a certain amount of people inside of that urban environment. Well, they've exceeded it by thousands of %. Right. These cities were built, especially the newer cities, in the time period between 1950 and 1980s, let's say. Right. And they were sized for like 2 or 3 million people. What happens when there's 40 million people there? So that means that there's a very specific solution that works there, but it may not work in Topeka. So that gives us a plethora of different opportunities to go in and help an urban environment understand its wants and its needs. And then that's when the big fish come in, meaning that once we identify what that framework is, we have access to unbelievable amounts of technology that is not just about a piece of software, a piece of hardware, or a drone or a sensor. It's about the data management, meaning that we can learn a lot from past data. We can learn a lot from data right now so that we can simulate what happens in the future. That's where the data-driven, human-centric world comes from. And that's what happened in Qingdao in China. It was a fantastic way of us collaborating with local Chinese companies that were starved for this type of conversation because they knew it, but they didn't know how to do it. Well, we give them a little bit of a how, and now they are propped up to actually do it for them, right? Because one thing that we don't want to do, especially overseas, is saying, hey, we're here from America, we're here to help. That ugly American thing does not go over well in today's world. But what does go over is the empathy of understanding that there's a human condition out there that everyone has. In other words, you want to take care of your family. Well, you want to take care of yourself. You want to take care of your family. You want to take care of your friends. You want to take care of your community. That doesn't change. So if we can start a conversation there, a lot of the issues that are out there, either politically, religious, all these other things, tend to take a back seat. And that's where we've been very fortunate about keeping the conversation about them and then enabling them through American innovation most of the time to actually do something cool. And we find that to be almost a business diplomacy way of talking to leaders that may not have the best relationship with our political leaders, but they understand that business will always trump politics. Sure. So we've been very fortunate. And yeah, it is fun, going on these trade missions with the White House and coming from that viewpoint, representing the United States construction industry. I take that with a lot of responsibility.
Sure. Well, you can ask just about any soldier out there that has traveled to foreign countries, and the amazing thing is it's typically not the average person that's creating wars and wants conflict. The average person wants exactly what you said. They want peace, they want happiness, they want to feed their children, they want to educate their children, and I've seen that all around the world, even when I was in the service, regardless whether it was a conflict or not. And I think, that really speaks to the heart of it. And what a great way to approach that topic with the governments, because you're right. A lot of countries don't trust their governments. We're having issues here in our own country on this. And you can't come at it from, hey, we're America, the big bad, leader of democracy here, when there's so many people out there that really don't understand all the inner workings of what's really happening today. So listen, everybody, we're going to get into this here. If you're just joining us, we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Paul, why are we live on Twitch?
Probably because of the gaming world, I hope.
Yeah, well, hey, that's exactly right. The young people are on Twitch.
That's right.
You know what? They've been using the virtual reality world a lot longer than our industry has been using it, and they have taken it to the next level. At least you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's my belief. We need those young people in our worlds, especially when we have people like yourself that need help building out smart cities. This takes a different breed of individual. It's not your typical construction worker, yes?
Yes, Dave. But and first of all, just thanks to you and all the veterans for your service.
Thank you.
It is a diplomatic. It's not a wartime position that you guys take, and I think that's something that's lost about that sensitivity. That you're representing what's good in the world. You're not there to oppress, right? And that's a huge big deal. So that when we then take that conversation into the business realm, the caretaking actually then comes from learning from the past, especially with our subtrades. They are our heroes in this particular world, because the way that we look at the world is this, and how we hope to attract the younger generation, that this is a cool thing to do, is on two fronts. Number one, there's only 4 things that humans need to survive, and that is clean air, fresh food, clean water, and shelter. Right? So shelter is of nobility. It's a very noble cause that we do every day. And the more that we can have that feel good about what we're doing is creating something that's keeping our species alive, well, that's a higher calling than wondering, I wonder if the homeowner is going to give me the check this week. I mean, yeah, those are real issues. But I think that when you're talking about smart cities and you're talking about smart buildings, you're talking about this new world, I think we need to make places at the table along with our sub trades for trades that have not traditionally been involved with our world. We're seeing that in the professional side, with engineers and architects and certain contractors with this world of virtual design and construction, VDC. That is now a profession. And that is something that I applaud everyone that got involved with that, because you're now taking care of not just the digital deliverable, but you're now starting to take care of the digital DNA of our industry. The digital DNA of the world now is in your hands, which means that, yeah, there's a lot of issues with the pieces of software out there and BIM and VIM and this thing and that thing. We're going to work through that, as old generations do, as these newer tools get used to managing things. But as we get involved with the data part, and we get involved with people that have grown up building digital virtual worlds, things like Minecraft, things like Roblox, and now even today with Fortnite, those people on Twitch, they are the next generation of how we're going to be looking at design, because the design is not just about the physical world. What may work in the physical world, when you have a digital experience and you get immersed into it, either through augmented or virtual reality, it may not be the best experience. So we have to be very careful, especially virtual design and construction folks, that digital DNA that we're creating up front, we have to take into account all 5 senses. I think that's something that's been lost since CAD came around, right? Where designers are very, very sensitive about how they use their tools, because although certain architects have really embraced it, like Frank Gehry's office and whatnot, that you could not have affordably built Frank Gehry projects without the use of a computer. But then again, you get others that take that to almost like the Walmart level, the easy button, and say, hey, wow, I can do a twisty building now because I'm using Rhino. If I see one more twisty building, I'm going to go ape crap. It's like, stop, that's not design. The visual representation of the built environment is only one sense. Why the hell don't we have in BIM sound? Sound is such an important design element, yet a lot of designers don't think about it because they want the easy button. What about touch and texture? What about understanding smell? One of the most powerful memory inducing senses, right? This is what we should be designing towards. That's smart buildings. That's smart, in the context, smart cities, is the design for all 5 senses with a generation that has grown up in a digital world, not afraid about building out things, right? And they're creative. We have such an opportunity in our industry to absorb tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people globally into our world so that we can have a better built environment, because I don't mind that they think differently. Now, there's certain disciplines that need to be put into play, such as we have this little thing called gravity, right? I mean, and in the world of gaming, you can fool with gravity, right? We understand that, but is there something that can be done from a design aspect, that curiosity of the human condition, to say, what happens if we did it this way? And I think that is one of the great things about our age, Dave, that we are now in a world where everything in the past can be questioned, because we have a whole new palette of tools that are right before us. It's a matter of us now. Do we have the courage enough to pick them up and learn from others that are outside of our industry?
You know, I can sit there and just listen to you all day. I mean, you can go into one topic and just, I mean, it's honestly, it's amazing the way you're thinking at a different level, such as touch, smell, all the senses. Why is that not brought into the virtual reality world of BIM and other 3D, softwares that have been put out there, especially in the gaming world? Let's take a look at what the Digit Group is doing, and maybe we can break it down, because I really want people to understand, what the smart city is solving for, right? So why don't we break it down? Let's talk about safety first, then we'll get into energy use, then water management, transportation, and better urban experience. So can we walk through each one of those, starting with safety, and what does that mean when it comes to a smart city?
Sure. So remember that there's going to be certain basic fundamentals that we put into place that's sort of like our signature. One of those is that we design all of our physical built environment vertical products, and we implement all four utilities. We have, power, we have plumbing, we have mechanical, and IT, meaning that the conduits that actually drive, and not just structured cabling, but being able to take the innovations of understanding of low voltage DC power and how that can actually be used in the walls, floors, and ceilings of every one of our buildings. When you do that, you now have the capability of tying together buildings through digital information, meaning that we're creating the internet of buildings when we say a smart city. They can all talk with each other. And because technology can sometimes do things quicker and more efficient than humans can, we create a better safety feature, such as, let's say, there's an active shooter and it's on a corner in our smart city. Right now, we understand maybe not who that person is, but we understand where, and can follow that person that's running to get into a building, and understand that we have a corridor. We have a vestibule system, right? So we understand that all the buildings are saying, hey, building number 1, he's coming into you. All of a sudden, those big glass doors on the inside of the vestibule lock, but they keep the outdoors open. The active shooter walks in, the door shuts behind him, and he's now trapped. Buildings can do that quicker than law enforcement, until the law enforcement then comes, probably within 2 to 3 to 5 minutes, right? That's one very simple example and kind of a fun one, but we learned that from gaming. Actually playing out things like Fortnite. I have a 10-year-old son that spends more V-Bucks than I make in a year. And he and his friends live that entire world, where they're learning skills and thought processes that we really didn't think about when we were playing Space Invaders and Asteroids. Right? It's a different type of experience. So we're trying to take some of that learned knowledge and implement that into real life conditions. And we're asking, why not? So that means that we're into this world of safety and security. We also have protocols, which means that we work with different types of agencies that because a lot of times we have iconic buildings that are probably at the center of a lot of our cities around the world. So what we do is we usually take a concentric circle going out about 100 kilometers, and every 5 to 1 kilometer moving inwards to that target building, there's different protocols. And some are technology, some are human-centric, some are just intelligence gathering. And we can manage the process before it becomes an issue. We have to worry about that with drones as well. Now there are drones that can be weaponized. Look at what happened over in Saudi Arabia a few years ago, when the Saudi Aramco refinery got shelled by a bunch of drones, right? So what happens is, how do you get ahead of that? Which means that the data becomes more important than ever, and not just having for data's sake, because that's what a lot of people are doing today. I mean, most people in our industry use BIM to create 2D construction documents. What?
Yeah.
What? Stick with AutoCAD. You're better at it. Like,
it's funny.
Crazy.
You say that, right? And Jerry McCaughey, who in Tekra, he said it best, and I always like to quote this. NASA is some of the best offsite builders out there, right? Because think about it. If you travel to space and you're going to put an attachment onto the space shuttle and your plan says field verify, that would be insane, right? It can't happen. It has to be right. The tools are there for us to design in virtual reality, in 3D.
Yeah.
Field verify is just an old term that's been on it. And I was trying to make a point with what you're saying. The technology is there. Why are we still using 2D? Is it because of
for years, as I've been in the field, right, pulling buildings up out of the Bronx, the South Bronx, working in China, literally pulling buildings up out of the ground. And I think that's where a lot of the, touch points, especially with the VDC world, with using technologies that are really accurate if you choose to have it accurate. In other words, let's make the data more authentic. Let's make it more accurate. Because every time I was out in the field, I was a stickler for like details. And I was always told by some sub-trades, we're not making watches out here, Paul. Right. And I'm like, well, guess what? We are now when we're in the DFMA world. Right.
That's right.
My tolerance levels have to be less than 1 millimeter, not 2 feet. Field verify.
And for everybody out there, DFMA is designed for manufacturer assembly, right? Because now we're designing and using more automation to build. And we'll hop into that in a moment as well, Paul. All right, so we touched on the safety factor. It's kind of like the advent of the radio for police officers. You're not going to outrun the radio.
That's
right.
Correct.
And they can catch up to you whenever you're going. And I think when we get back to the end of all this data collection, it'll be interesting to hear what the world thinks about people collecting their data and being able to be locked into their own building should the government want to shut them down. So that's a question we'll touch on. But let's get into some energy use here in a moment. But listen, everybody, if you are not following the Digi Group, you're not following Paul Doherty on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, wherever he is, you're wrong. Follow him. You need to be watching what's happening out there. This is a great resource for everybody out there to be learning and seeing what's coming in to the future here, to include blockchain. We're going to touch on blockchain just a little bit at the end, but that's a whole nother avenue of conversation. So, and we will get to comments and questions in just a moment here. We're going to get into energy use next. Then we'll pause for comments and questions. If you do have a question, please put a Q in front of it to make it easy for us to follow and find. And if you're on Twitch out there, let us know you're on Twitch today. We love to hear from you. I can tell there's people on Twitch because I'm looking. I know you're there. I just don't know who you are yet, but we will find out. We need more young people in this industry. All right, Paul, listen, let's get into energy use. We talked about a safety example. Let's talk about how energy is playing out in the smart cities here.
So when we deal with energy, we have to associate it, and it's coupled with water. Because the number one use of water is an energy plant. The number one use of energy is a water plant. Do you know that? So that coupling is something that we look at for utilities in a way where we have to reimagine now things, because we have to think as what's been called a circular economy. So we deal with district-wide solutions along with individual building solutions, off-the-grid solutions. And that mix, that basket approach, I think, is where we're finding major success. This isn't about putting up solar panels and saying that we're a solar paneled city. That would be stupid, and not because of anything other than energy right now in the solar world has about a 23% efficiency as a solution. It still has a long way to go. We need a lot more R&D on solar. But you know what? It's a good enough technology just for now, but that doesn't mean that you put your entire economy, on top of a solution like that. So it's a component, and it's a good one. We actually do implement solar as much as we can, but there's also other technologies. Now, wind is one that is expensive, and it's something that even the government of Germany is trying to reimagine and rethink after installing all those bird killers. But we're also looking at hydro, right? And hydro, again, these things are very expensive. So this next world, this 2.0 world of clean tech, we're looking at solutions that have been rumbling around but haven't really caught fire for various reasons. One of them is a technology out of the coal industry, and it uses a very high heat, and the entire process is called plasma gasification. Now, when I was growing up on Long Island, out in New York, there was this refinery plant in a place called Garden City, of all places, Garden City, and it literally what they did was they took our municipal solid waste and they burnt it, and the smoke came out of the smokestacks, and of course that turned to turbines, and then the cancer rate went through the roof, and they wonder why. Right. So maybe not the best solution, but when you actually put the temperature at such a high temperature, it breaks down municipal solid waste, including the 7 different forms of plastic, to the molecular level without toxins, which means that it creates a plasma. The plasma then goes and creates a synthetic gas that turns the turbines, and your solution is done. Except that the residue is like Miracle Grow. It is a fertilizer for agriculture. Now all of a sudden you're talking. You're taking care of the waste issue. You're creating vast amounts, and I'm talking like district-wide amounts of power. And then at the end of the day, you're using it to grow food better. So those are the solutions that we look for. And yes, these things are installed. One's installed in India. We're now powering through the Middle East, trying to get these things up and operational, not just as a proof of concept, but to actually walk the walk, not talk the talk. This is how you do energy. The other pieces of energy that then turn into a water-based solution as well. We are looking at the dehumidifiers right now as a major source of fresh water. Right now, in a place called Jericho in the West Bank, we are looking at that as a solution so that we're not causing stress on a drought-stricken world. Right. And we have a project going up that will be self-sufficient water-wise and energy-wise, independent of the existing world. And hopefully there'll be enough power and enough water generated that it can actually be shared then with the context of the community that this particular project is going to be servicing. So go ahead.
Does that mean like the buildings humidification systems would then generate the water that it's collecting and pulling out of the air, and you're bringing that back into the system? Is that what you're thinking?
Correct. These systems exist. Most of these are done in places like our partnership with Georgia Tech in Atlanta, MIT's Media Labs, Sci-Fi out in Stanford. There's so many great ideas out there. But the thing is, how do you take the academic wonderfulness and then implement that as either a real going business or in the context of helping our built environment? Again, the nobility of shelter. And that is our greatest challenge right now, is to bridge those gaps and ensure that we're not just implementing innovation for innovation's sake. It may sound cool, but guess what? We have to build a business case behind that it's profitable. And then you start to do your ecosystem. Let's pull together the puzzle. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't think like that. I don't know where I got it, because I am an architect, but the business gene got into me. And, the first thing we do is business plan the entire thing out. Do your pro formas, do your work ahead of time. So much so that right now we are reimagining our construction loan process on big time. Because not only are we looking at innovations from like what we just did, talked about, either through the dehumidification process, through plasma gasification, it's about designing this world, the physical stuff that we need. When all of a sudden, this idea popped into our heads that said, wouldn't it be really cool if we could have a representation that we already have digitally, because we do the digital DNA? Well, that lives. Those documents live. But what would happen if we pull that out, put it into a gaming engine, hello Twitch, that all of a sudden would create a virtual online environment? Some people call it a digital twin. We call it a metaverse, because we just don't do the one building, we do a group of buildings. So in Qingdao, with the virtual reality theme park, here's a real world deal. We have a $1.2 billion budget. We were borrowing $1.2 billion from our banks in order to build this thing. Well, the global pandemic happened, put a pause on it. We started tapping the brakes, slowing it down. And, cool things sometimes happen when you're stuck home in in your home, and your brain starts to work and you start to think strategically rather than I got to get the project out the door. And what popped out was this: we are able to lower our construction loan by approximately 13% on $1.2 billion. That's a lot of money, because we're taking our BIM, we're now gamifying it, and we're able to open up the virtual reality theme park online 2 years before we actually deliver the physical theme park. Now, all of a sudden, we have a revenue stream and we're bringing down our construction cost. That's real. Now things get interesting about how important that information is, that data, right, in what's normally called construction documents, which now become a revenue stream. It's no longer a cost center, it's a profit center. So
I have to ask this. Are you telling me I can put on my Oculus headset and I could ride the roller coasters in Qingdao?
Yes. And not only that, we now have technology out of Hollywood. It's a subsidiary of a group called Digital Domain. They're world famous special effects groups. They're also the world leaders with holographics. If you remember, about 10 years ago when Tupac Shakur popped up on stage 5 years after he was dead and did an entire concert, that's these guys. They're our partners. They have a group called Iconic Engine. And this is the coolest technology I've seen in years, where if you remember the Jedi Council, how everyone's all sitting around, some are physical, some are virtual, but everyone's in real time. They've done it. They've done it working with their customers like T-Mobile, Orange, and other European-based tech companies, telecom companies, and they're now bringing it here. And what we're doing is actually using it as a way of what's called co-watching. So the European Championship was last night, right? And the night before was the Copa America. So 2 big soccer matches, right? Brazil and Argentina and England and Italy. Well, we were able to use a Quest and be virtually in the same environment, watching the game in real time at 4 different points on the planet Earth. Now, all of a sudden, things get this is not a Zoom call now. This actually does involve sound. It involves vision. And through haptic, depending on which device you're using, you can actually high five and feel the guy giving you a high five after a goal, right? So we're starting, there we go.
That way.
Okay, there we go.
It's one way.
You know what?
Cool is that? All right.
Yeah. But my son would know that instinctively because of the mirroring, like in Fortnite and all that stuff. So you can tell I don't play. Thank God, I stink at it. But but this is just an example of how we are starting to blur the lines. And Zoom showed us in the business world about how we can struggle through the virtualness of things. But as we start now to gain a better perspective, especially in the world of virtual, which is more immersive, but also augmented, right? We have technologies right now that are being used for Netflix shows that allow the show to move from beyond your screen. And if you have something like an iPhone 12 that has the LiDAR, well, it will know all the parameters of your room, where the doors are, where the windows are, where the corners are. And it will now project what you're watching on the screen to be actually now part of the room. This is now reality. This is happening now, and we're just pioneering this stuff. When we realize that we're not just in the construction industry of procuring and delivering the built environment, but we also now have a responsibility for the virtual environment, things start to open up. This is probably the biggest land grab I've ever seen, because there's a limit to the amount of Earth we have on planet Earth, but there's no limit in the world of digital worlds.
It's funny you say that. I say that in a keynote that I give about the marketing and why I started doing all these videos. And, even with YouTube and video, it is one of the largest, it's like the largest land grab that's ever been out there. You can market yourself today for free all over the place. And it's just a small example of, a very small example of what you're talking about. But the internet, there's still so much opportunity if you open your mind and you think differently. I mean, listen, I'm going for a roller coaster ride this afternoon in Qingdao, right? In China. I'll be there. I'm going. You want to go with me, Paul?
I'll be sitting right next to you, and we can raise our hands like this and everything.
That's right. We can high five and have a little bit of haptic feedback. All right. So we've talked about safety, right? And how that can be used. We talked about energy use and how that can be used. We talked about water management and how dehumidifiers can be used to put water back into the system and be self-generating for everybody. And we're going to get into transportation here in just 1 second. So listen, if you're out there, we are going to get the questions and comments. And I know I said I'd get to it next, but I think I want to get through this transportation and then we're going to get to it because there is so much to learn and talk about. I don't want to lose this thread. Paul, I just want, when we're done with this, you got to tell me where I go to school to be like you, because this is cool stuff. And when we get
called the School of Hard Knocks.
The School of Hard Knocks. I know I've had a few of those. Hey, so let's get into transportation. Here's what I always say, and one day Elon Musk is going to break down my door and yell at me. But I always say that why are the cars not charging our homes versus our homes charging our cars? They're out there working like a windmill and spinning their wheels. You'd think they'd be able to generate power and bring it back to us. But I think you have a different outlook on this, and it's not the cars. Am I going to hear you right when you said earlier the pavement can be generating molecules and all these other things to help us generate energy on top of it? I mean, in safety, I mean, I think the car falls into all of this.
Yep. Actually, before the European Cup on I believe it was NBC nationally, they were showing the FE Grand Prix race from Brooklyn, New York.
Yep.
Now, my involvement with FE was actually being in Hong Kong for one of the first ones. And it was a wild experience because they're quiet. Now, the whole thing about an F1, especially a Grand Prix in a downtown like Monaco or something like that, is you feel the engine, you feel it like reverberating inside of your chest. It's, it's wonderful, right? The FE, what happened was people didn't realize that the car already passed them because it's silent, right? The next year I went, they literally brought in F1 engines and put them onto speakers just so people knew that the cars were coming. They faked it, right? And the FE race also is something where working with Qualcomm, who just sold their technology, actually the group within Qualcomm was called Halo. They brought themselves out. They're now called Witricity. And what they do is that they wirelessly charge the cars, the FE races, meaning that instead of going in and charging, like the way that you go into a pit stop and, get gas, no, man, just drive. As long as you're moving, it's generating electricity through the piezoelectric and wirelessly charging your car. There's no need for charge stations. So all these people that are investing in charging stations, well, good luck with that. Your cheese just got moved. Right now, that's just one example. The idea of transportation, though, is something that is near and dear to our company's heart. In that, I went around. Thankfully, we have the financial backing to help spearhead a lot of these big initiatives. So I had a blank check, and I wanted to go out and buy a fleet of electric vehicles that could be converted into autonomous vehicles over time, and I wanted that on a citywide scale. And met with Tesla, met with GM, met with Toyota, and met with Daimler. And every one of them were trying to sell me a self-driving car. And I said, you're not listening. I need public transportation. What can you do for me? And they went, now there are a couple of groups, out of France, there's a group called Navia that actually has a number of successful installations here in the US. One of my favorites is in Orlando at a place called Lake Nona, developed by Tavistock Development with my friend Joe Lewis. It is such a cool environment where they literally have a working autonomous vehicle public transportation system for real. I know
we
that
were just there with our live show.
Oh, no kidding. Wonderful. Yeah. It's such a great
weeks
place.
Ago. Yeah. With Craig Collins.
Oh, very cool. Good guy. Yeah. And, the Wave Hotel and just all the things they're doing down there is just, it's over the top. It's wonderful. Where the University of Michigan also has, a Navia system in place. And it's a first generation. And God bless them, they're doing it, right? But what we're doing is we start to think differently, especially with our work in China, where we were invited by former President Trump to join him on his trip to both South Korea and China when he went over there, where we signed an agreement with Photon, the world's largest EV manufacturer, because when all these traditional automobile manufacturers told me we don't have that, yet I had a checkbook, I needed to come up with my own design. So we partnered up with former engineers from Pininfarina, the people behind the Ferrari and the Lamborghini. We went to Milan. We designed our own units, 3 different units: a 20-meter bus for commuter scale transportation, 12-meter buses, which are traditional in just about every city, and 2-meter buses for the first mile, land mile, and fully autonomous. These things are gorgeous looking, because I felt that the majority of buses out there just look ugly. It's like they went for lowest cost and it looks like it. They're just ugly. They look like machines. So we wanted a better experience. We also then, working with, Qualcomm, working with the Georgia Tech crew, we could put these things together so that we have a road generating energy source, energy and data distribution through electricity, working with these autonomous vehicles. Those autonomous vehicles, though, we also did not want them just to be, pulling people, goods, and services from point A to point B. We also challenged ourselves, saying, could we actually be creating mobile real estate? In other words, does the interior have to be for seating or for cargo? Couldn't it also be a exam room for a medical professional? Could it be a kitchen so the sous chef and the chef can come and plug into your unit to actually not go out to dinner, but actually have the dinner come to you? So we're rethinking this. We're working very closely with the state of Tennessee, especially with this infrastructure bill coming out, that you will see, we hope, in the United States, the first generation of mobile real estate in a way that allows us to generate enough transportation newness without scaring people and making it affordable. In certain cases, maybe even free, right? Because what happens to that, single mom with 5 kids, and one of the kids got to go to the doctor and she has to go food shopping? How come our vehicles can't adapt to that? Right. And these aren't just, trying to make up something. It's trying to meet those needs, as you opened up with this entire, cast. What are smart cities for? Well, they're to use technology so that the people that really need the help can get it at whatever level and whatever system is out there. And I think that should be a nice goal for everyone, that this isn't just about making money. We can make money, but this is about doing the right thing.
Hey, Dave? Paul, Paul, I know you have some other commitments coming up here, so I want to get some comments and questions. We have a hard stop right at 2 o'clock Eastern time, so let's hop into comments and questions. And I think this is going to be perfect, Paul, because we're going to have you back on if you're up for it, because there's so much more to cover here. There's a lot of people watching, so that's awesome as well. That means people are really interested in this. But Jennifer, let's go to some comments and questions and see what we have. Jeff LaRoque checking in from Ottawa, Canada. Hey, what's happening, Jeff? Thank you. BTK Advisors. Hi, we're joining you from New York City. All right, perfect.
My hometown. Your
hometown. Air Mobile joining us from YouTube. Our future selves need to love us. They hate us right now. That's funny. Central planners want command and control, but legacy infrastructure and decentralized free marketers want coral reef. Can we have intelligence frameworks that offers both? And hey, that's a good question. What do you think on that, Paul?
Well, let's take China, for instance, right, where they are all about command and control. It's amazing to watch their central bank digital currency approach with the RMB, their currency, where it's decentralized. Right, so you're creating this amazing collision, and they're learning from it. And I think we should be taking a very close watch as to the behaviors of what can be command and control that is necessary. That's necessary. Is it about life safety? Our firefighters, our police, our emergency, our EMTs. Is that more of a command and control? But could we be using things like blockchain and other types of general ledger, decentralized general ledger technologies that allow us then to explore maybe further evidence of anticipating problems? For instance, would be Surfside in Miami. Could that be, if we would have used technology, could we have quickly understood that there was a distress level? And again, command and control says that's my private information, but when does it become the public's issue? So that's a great question. And you know what? We're taking it one project at a time. We are part of a massive project in Saudi Arabia to create a new country, not a city, a new country called NEOM. And we're going through that process right now. And some of it is morally and ethically coming to a head about what is right and what is wrong. And the approach of command and control, especially when you're starting to acquire data, that was the failure of what happened with Sidewalk Labs, Google's Sidewalk Labs in Toronto. The people did not trust if you did not tell them what you were going to do with their information. Because, in my opinion, there's no way that a tech company that makes their money on data gathering to sell it without other people knowing it should be involved with the real estate development world at all. Get out of the way. You should not be in our industry. Get the hell out.
Perfect. Listen, awesome. Yeah, you definitely got Paul going on that one. Thank you for that question. Listen, if you are not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please go subscribe, because if you missed today's episode or the beginning, you can go back and watch it on our YouTube channel, which is growing fast. Please go there and subscribe. All right, Andrew Seeley has a question. We have about 6 minutes, so we're going to try and get through these as quick as we can, Paul. Have we got piezoelectric materials that produce useful current, or are we still getting mostly voltage from them? Did I say that word right? Piezoelectric?
Yeah, it's a piezoelectric, but yeah.
Piezoelectric.
So Andrew, there is some breakthroughs, and it has to do with the material sciences group at Georgia Tech about the current issue, right? Because right now, the majority of it's still voltage, which is the problem, right? Which is why, the majority of groups are not really creating a business. They're creating great demos, right? PaveGen out of the UK being a prime example. Really good guys, decent technology, but they oversold it. Again, they never got the technology to get to the point of being current, right? Yeah. It was just stand on our tile and the light will light up like a Saturday Night Fever disco floor. That's cool, but is it a business? So, Andrew, you're asking the right question. I think the maturity level, we're probably at that tipping point right now of the different materials that are being studied underneath different horizontal finishes is really the key, and we're just getting through that phase right now. If you go to NASA's Visitor Center at Cape Canaveral, you can see it live. It's installed in the entire outdoor plaza, and check it out. I think you'll be impressed that we're at that tipping point of moving from voltage into the current, and it's going to take that last gasp of R&D to actually make that leap.
Great question. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate you. All right. What do we got, Jen? Tim Sims from the Treehouse. So glad Paul is on with you today. Couldn't imagine excuse me, a better mind to have on Dave Cooper live for Smart Cities. Man, you're not kidding, Tim. You're not kidding. Thank you, Tim.
Good to see you, Tim.
Alistair Sawyer, all the way from Vietnam. Interesting. Love the 2M bus idea. Mobile real estate. Now, Alistair, if you don't know him, Paul, does huge projects. Even from Vietnam, they're doing stuff in Florida and Miami. Modular, volumetric. There's the connection right there. Might be good to you guys talk one of these days. All right, Susie Hall, I totally agree about the importance of designing for all 5 senses. It makes sense. Our whole world is about touch and feel. Oh, no, not Steve Burrows. Remember I said there was another most interesting man in the world on the show? Well, there he is. That's Steve Burrows. I'm all for learning from the best, but nature mastered sustainability. So how is the data from nature being collected and distributed so we embrace systems based on the teachings of evolution?
Amen, Steve. Actually, the basis of design for the majority of our projects is based on biomimicry. We need to learn more about how nature works as an ecosystem and how the contextualization of a decision that's made creates that domino effect, right? We even do that for our policies, so much so that as of January of this year, internally, we formed our own ethics council. There's a lot of inherited conversations out there. Some people call that bias. I don't. It's an inherited conversation that should be a conversation, right? That we need to learn from our past, but in a way so that we can create a better future. And I know that sounds very trite, but really where we're getting to, Dave, is this notion that there may be a way of learning about the essence of how nature works and then be able to not just go save as, but to modify our behaviors in a way that allow us to rethink or reimagine every step of the way, because there is no one silver bullet. right? This is a bunch of different decisions that collectively, as we start to do our cities, all interrelate. And we need to understand that this may work 5 years from now, but did we do the right thing when we look back 50 years from now, 100 years from now? And this is the great challenge. Pop-up cities, mostly of Canada, US, and Australia, New Zealand, they ultimately fell into a decision trap based upon the automobile. We now have a chance to not just erase it, because that wouldn't be, but to learn from it and to start to modify so that we can have a better built environment. At the end of the day, we are going to be in a world that says we need to have newer technologies lead that, which is why we went whole hog back into 2015 into the world of blockchain. And the idea is to have a smart contract. And what I'd like to leave you and the audience with is we are now entering a phase where we're no longer doing the traditional mining, as they call it, with coins. What we're doing is we're mining with real estate, tying the real estate, okay, the physical real estate. Let's say it's a $10 million building, to the digital model of that. That digital model, we're not using it as an NFT, although that's a quick and easy way of making money, but that's kind of silly. We're actually using it as a fungible token, which means that it becomes a security underneath the auspices of the Security and Exchange Commission. We now have a way of having people invest in real estate on our virtual representation of that by fractionalizing it. We're democratizing how people can actually create their own wealth.
So you can own part of a building, not the whole thing.
Well, you would be owning the physical, the digital representation of the physical building.
Right.
Yep. So that's a whole new way of looking at things, but we're having a lot of fun with it.
Well, listen, Paul, we are at the hour. This has been absolutely amazing. And I'm going to ask you right now, we got to have you back on. We didn't get through nearly everything we want to get through on the show. So I'm going to put it out there and hopefully we can get you rescheduled to come back on, because I would like to talk deeper about owning virtual real estate and the value that it is there and how that fractionalization actually works. Because I don't know if everybody picked it up out there in the audience, but that's a reality that's coming along with blockchain and all your contracts and everything else that's happening out there. You need to be ready for this stuff. It's not if, it's just when. It's on its way and it's going to happen. And if you're not prepared for some of these things, it could go the other way for you. And we want to make sure we stay up to speed here on Dave Cooper Live. And that's why we bring experts of the world on, like Paul Doherty. Paul, I don't know where you go to Paul Doherty, Hard Knocks University, and how you gain all this information, how you get invited by presidents to travel around the world. But man, my hat's off to you. I think you're very impressive, and the level of conversation is amazing. And the fact that I've had plenty of conversations with you before this show, your heart's in the right place, doing it for the right reasons. And I think that's what's super, super special about you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you to the audience. And yes, Ann, I love Kansas City.
Yeah, there's a lot of comments out there. Hey, if we didn't get your comment, there you go. Thanks for calling me young. So, all right, not everybody on Twitch is young, but we do appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll go through comments and questions if they come up and send them to Paul so we can get some answers for you. And everybody else out there, thank you so much for joining us. And please tune in this Wednesday. We're going to be talking about hemp insulation live on Dave Cooper Live, Product Spotlight, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. if you're on the Pacific Coast like I am. We are in California. We are heading to California today, so look us up if you want to connect. Paul, you have a wonderful afternoon. I'll come back to you after we do the outro, unless you have to run. Everybody else out there, go follow Paul. If you want to know what's happening in the world, that's the guy to go follow and his team. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Paul.
Bye, everyone.